All right, so I'm Yong-Ting, so I'm currently an assistant professor at early childhood education in Tsing Hua University. So today I would like to talk about loneliness in school and how we can turn this feeling of loneliness into a sense of belonging, especially for children with support needs in school. Okay, so I want to talk about loneliness because it is such a global issue nowadays, and it actually has a prevalence of 1 in 6 people. And most importantly, and even alarming, is that when we look at the development of feeling of loneliness, we can see a very clear elevation when children are transitioning into adolescence. And I think that shows the importance also for the school environment, especially because in this period of time in supporting them. And another thing is that we can see this rate of prevalence is much, much higher in children with support needs, for example, autistic children. But then what does loneliness actually look like in school? How can we recognize it if it is such a alarming issue, it's such an urgent issue? So I also asked the AI about this question. I said, okay, give me a set of 3 pictures showing loneliness in school. And this is what I got. But then when looking at it, you will start to wonder, does being alone equals to feeling lonely? And on the other hand, is when you're with others, does that mean that you are not feeling lonely, right? So I think the important question here is then, when are children feeling lonely? So when we are looking at the definition of loneliness, then we could see that it is a realization, a recognition. So when you're aware that there is a mismatch between what you desire for your social connection and what you actually have in your reality. So when you realize that there is a mismatch that is there, then a feeling of loneliness can emerge. So that means when children start to think about, do I have a friend? Or do I have many friends? Can I join others when I want to? When I need help, is there someone? Can I follow what is going on around me? Do I have a place to go to? And also, like, is my work or what I said valued and respected? So I think from this example, you could see that the feeling of loneliness is actually influenced by the interaction between children's access to social connections and also what actually mattered to them. So then here, when we're thinking about this question regarding autistic children, then what actually matters to autistic children then? And this is what we see often in the literature. So in the literature, you can often see that autistic children are often the minority in the mainstream schools, and they are very often being seen alone. They have fewer interactions on playgrounds, for example, and also among the peers, they are more often ignored or even rejected or even bullied by their peers. And they also could report having fewer friends, and their peers could also say they are less being seen as someone to hang out with. So they will prefer not to hang out with these children. Then why we see this picture in school? And there are several common assumptions that you could see when people are talking about autism, whether it is amongst people, whether it is in TV series, or whether it is in literature. Very often, you see this kind of assumption that it could be because these children are lacking social motivation, or because a lack of empathy, or perhaps they prefer being alone, they like it, right? But actually, we don't really know would know so limitedly about what do these children actually need for their social life, what are their preferences, and also what do they see this world, what is the world that is perceived by them, what do they feel about it, and why so, why this is happening. And I think this is because many of these pictures are actually given in the eye of the non-autistic people, from the non-autistic perspectives. And very often, autistic children, they have to meet the expectation of the non-autistic people, the non-autistic standards. So they are expected to be normal, right, to act like other people. And that is actually telling them that they have to hide themselves. But on the other hand, if we are looking at autism from another point of view, if we see it as a part of diversity, which is also the so-called neurodiversity, so 神经多样性, then it is actually saying that autism is just part of the individual differences that we can all have. And that is, when we are using this kind of point of view, we are focusing more on validating the child, on empowering the child. We are telling them, you are not broken, you are not wrong, you can be who you are. But if we want to think from that perspective, you want to rethink about autism from that perspective, then how we can approach this, and these are the things I think are important. The first is that we do need to rethink about the assumptions that we are making. So whether it is actually normalizing, whether it is actually imposing a certain standard that may not be really suitable for the child that we are interacting with. And also, I think it is so important that no matter it is in research or in our works or in education, to include more child-centered perspectives. And also to consider the different individual differences in this process. So here I would also like to share with you how we do this in our research and try to capture these different aspects. So this is the sensor data-driven approach that we use. So for example, we will give children this kind of belt with different sensors. So here you could see like GPS, RFID, and motion. And I think GPS we all know. You probably also use that to get to this building. And the RFID is a sensor to detect distance. So you can actually, we can use that to detect whether children have face-to-face contact. And we also have motion sensor to detect whether children are running and something like that. So for example, when we are using this RFID, then we can actually get all the interaction, all the social contact between all the children when they are, for example, in a class or when they are on the playground, and how they are contacting each other to get this kind of social network. So here, each dot you can actually see as a child. Okay, so you could see that this is how they are connected. And with this kind of method, you could see that besides that we can trace face-to-face contact, it is child-centered because it is on children. So we are letting children to let us know who they are in contact with, and also like who is with whom for how long. We can actually get all this kind of data. And when we are combining all this different information from the sensors, we can actually show through the data what they are doing. For example, on the playground, so how they are moving, how they are in contact with each other when they are playing. So we can actually get a lot of interesting outcomes from that. So in this study, then we use this technique and also to combine with other methods in order to know better, to include different aspects of children's social connections. So for example, using RFID, then we use that to track their physical connection. So for example, how much time, how long they are in social contact with other peers, and also the number of partners they are having. And on the other hand, we also used peer reports to understand their emotional connections. So for example, how much they're being liked as a playmate by their peers, and also how many friendships that they have are actually reciprocated. And on the other hand, we also use a self-report where we ask the children themselves whether they feel lonely in school. So, and in addition to that, we tested in a neurodiverse setting. So instead of like in the literature, usually children are in mainstream schools and autistic children could be just the 1 or 2. So they would be the minority. But in this study, we did it in 2 Dutch special primary schools. And so these autistic children, they are not a minority anymore. And they are also having other neurodiverse peers that are interacting with them. So here we actually have 47 autistic children and also other 52 neurodiverse non-autistic classmates between 8 to 13 years. And this would be what we found. So first, when we are looking at each of the indicators that we include in this study, then we actually found no difference between non-autistic children and autistic children. So here you could see that no matter it's their social connections or their feeling of loneliness, there's no difference. So that is something that we did not expect. And I think this result is important because it actually shows that autistic children do have social desires because they actually feel as lonely as their non-autistic peers. And another thing we can see from this outcome is that when these children are given a suitable environment, they can actually be socially motivated and also included by their peers. So this is a picture that we see very differently from the other literature that is done in the mainstream schools. And further, we look at how these different social connection aspects are related to their feeling of loneliness. And in this way, we try to understand what matters to their feeling of loneliness. So here, what we found for the non-autistic children is that when they spend longer time in face-to-face peer contact during their break time with their peers, then they feel less lonely. But we do not see that relation in autistic children. Instead, what we see that it matters to these autistic children is that when they are more liked by their peers in the class, then they feel less lonely. So it seems that what matters most is that they feel part of the group. And it's actually beyond whether they have face-to-face contact, how long they're having it, how many partners they're having it, and also like how many friendships that they are having. But if they feel that they are part of the group, then that seems to be the key for them to feel less lonely in school. So here, I think from these results, I think what we can see is that children can have different social needs. They can have different needs for different level of social interaction, and that is actually possible, and that is actually meaningful. There could be different aspects that are meaningful to different children. So from that, I think when we want to think about how we can turn loneliness into a sense of belonging, then this question is really important. Like the foundation, the basis of it is that children have to feel that their needs are respected. That is okay and accepted. Then how can we do that? I would say that then we will need to avoid the one-fits-all assumptions, because we could see there are actually different needs. So we cannot just assume that everyone wants to have a lot of friends or everyone want to have a lot of interaction. That may not be always good for all children. So to do that, I think to avoid having this kind of one-fits-all assumption, what we can do in our everyday life is that to think about whether we do provide equal access to children with different needs. For example, with their access to the different spaces, right? So like when you're on your way here, do you feel that it is really convenient to get here, right? And also, and I think for this spatial part, Caroline will talk about it later, so I will skip that part. But also, for example, like information, can they access the information that they need, right? And to think about that, we will also need to think about, for example, different communication styles. Do we provide different ways for children to participate and to understand what is going on, right? So in this sense, I think, for example, we can consider different communication styles, different play styles that children are having, and also, for example, the different social levels that we may provide in our environment in order for children with different level of social needs, they can also participate in the way that they feel comfortable with, right? And also like the stimulation levels. So this is also why I would like to propose everyone to use a sign language, because by clapping everyone together in a room like this, in a closed room like this, sometimes it can be really exhausting if you have to listen to it for the whole day, right? And I think in this way, when we start to think about this, then we are going more towards to provide a school environments that do provide a sense of security, autonomy, and also belonging to actually all children. So here I would like to thank the team that is behind this study and also the Building for Belonging Consortium in which we are still continue this line of research. And also thank you very much.